Major Garrett is with us from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Major, so with just 3 days until the primary, the president came out and said that Trump will not be the eventual nominee, saying that he has faith in the American people. What's the strategy here from the president?
So that is, in essence, a general election argument from the President of the United States, the commander-in-chief, that the presidency, in so many ways, is far more difficult than Donald Trump conveys on the campaign trail or may even personally understand himself. So why would the president do that in the midst of a Republican primary process? Well, because he probably wants to aggravate Republicans to support Trump more. Now, why would he do that? Well, because I think the president believes whoever the Democratic nominee is, Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, will have a better time, an easier time winning if Donald Trump is the standard bearer of the Republican Party. So why not weigh in now, know that your comments are likely to antagonize, aggravate, just steam generally Republicans who don't want you meddling in their primary process, and also begin the argument in a general election context that the presidency is a very tough job with lots of unexpected crises and things you have to manage on an ongoing basis, and suggest that Trump either doesn't understand that or doesn't have the temperament for it. So it's a double-edged strategy, or a two-layered strategy, really. Involve yourself in the Republican primary, maybe boost support for Trump to make him more likely to be the Republican nominee, and then begin the conversation with the country about whether or not he should be president, which the president believes will work to the Democrats' advantage generally and the nominee's advantage, whoever that is, Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton specifically.
Yeah, and Donald Trump certainly jumped right on that comment, as you suggested. I wondered to myself, is this reverse psychology for the very reasons that you brought up? But I'm wondering if it could also backfire.
Backfire in what sense?
Well, you know, it's sort of a complicated thing that I suppose it's in the best interest of the Democrats to have somebody like Donald Trump be the nominee, because according to at least all the polls, no matter who becomes the nominee on the Democratic side, they would handily beat him. But that's making a lot of presumptions, isn't it?
It is making a lot of presumptions. And the thing that is true about general election matchup polls taken during a primary process is that they're only slightly indicative about what actually is going to happen in the general election, because that conversation changes. And I will tell you, there are Republicans who are now sort of coming around to the Trump phenomenon. They were doubters at first, maybe skeptics, maybe outright opposed to it, but they see the poll numbers, they see the results in New Hampshire, the strong second-place finish in Iowa, and the large turnout, the very large turnout in both states, and say to themselves, you know what, Trump may be bringing more people into this Republican Party than we imagined at first, and some of those people could be old-line, blue-collar Democrats who have either left the party or left the process entirely, and Trump could bring them back in. So there are some Republicans who think if Trump does become the nominee, he might actually be competitive against Sanders or Clinton. I guarantee you the Trump campaign believes that.
So that's the long-term bet, but short-term, we have South Carolina to get through, and Trump, all signs show that he's going to win the primary. He's got a pretty large lead in most of the polls, but can anything change between now and Saturday?
So here's the dynamic in South Carolina, as expressed to me by almost every one of the campaigns actively competing here and by Republicans familiar with South Carolina's overall approach to the primary process. Number one, turnout will be very high, just as it was in Iowa and New Hampshire. And though the polls indicate there is some level of indecision here, more people than not have landed on who they're going to support. And the other thing I've been told is whatever the polling data says about Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, and Cruz is running second here, you can probably add 4 to 6 points to wherever Ted Cruz is polling, because he has a very well-organized get-out-the-vote effort here in South Carolina. I've been investing in that get-out-the-vote effort for the better part of 4 to 5 months. And then there is this sense that two candidates are getting a bit of a second look. Marco Rubio, for sure. We're at his event here that'll start in a couple of hours. And John Kasich. Now, John Kasich had no traction in this state whatsoever. No organization, no visibility, nothing. Second in New Hampshire. That's given him visibility. They're actually spending money on television. They don't have an organization, but they're getting a long second look. And that second look, that reappraisal of Kasich, might actually sneak him into contention, third or fourth, which would be much better than Kasich would have predicted before the New Hampshire primary. The other big story, of course, is Jeb Bush. What happens here? If Jeb Bush finishes fourth or worse, it's going to be very hard for his campaign to credibly argue he's making progress, he's building momentum, because that would have been underwhelming finishes in the first 3 major contests on the Republican nominating calendar. and that does not typically provide a springboard for success in future primaries or caucuses.
All right, Major Garrett in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Thanks a lot, Major.
You got it.